Good morning. Buenos dias. First of all, let me say a big thank you to Marquetta for that introduction and, more importantly, for your leadership of this organization. Congratulations on your new tenure. Let's give her a big round of applause for what I'm sure will be a successful tenure as your incoming president. I also want to say thank you to all of the folks here at AILA for the invitation to be here today. Over the years, I've had the opportunity to work with a number of immigration attorneys. I know the spirit and the passion and the commitment that you bring to the work that you do and to representing your clients. I join you in different capacities, of course, as a candidate for President of the United States, but also as a recovering attorney. And as a recovering attorney, let me tell you the one joke that I created, all right? Here it goes. Let me get it out of the way. What do you call a collection of lawyers' diaries? A library. There you go. That's my joke. That's the only joke that I've ever come up with, right? I know that, that our profession often is the butt of jokes, but the work that you do is very serious and is committed to the truth. I'm happy to join you here today because I know that in this room there are people who are dedicating their career, going above and beyond to make sure that people in need have the representation that they deserve, and that our nation continues to be, in this 21st century, a nation of immigrants. This issue is very personal for me because I grew up with a grandmother who had come over from Mexico when she was 7 years old, along with her little sister. Their parents had passed away, and in 1922, their closest relatives who lived in San Antonio, Texas, brought them across the border at Eagle Pass, Texas, and my grandmother ended up on the west side of San Antonio. She never graduated even from elementary school because they pulled her out of school to help the family, and so she worked her entire life as a maid, a cook, and a babysitter. She raised my mom as a single parent, and my mother raised my brother Joaquin and me as a single parent as well. If you measured my grandmother's life by the conventional standards of success in the United States, of whether she achieved the American dream, many people would say no. She never owned a house. She never owned a car. She never opened a bank account. She didn't learn to drive. But just 2 generations after my grandmother got here to this country with almost nothing, one of her grandsons is serving as a member of the United States Congress, my brother Joaquin, and the other is a candidate for President of the United States. That is America, and that is what immigration has done for our country. I had the opportunity to serve my community on the City Council of San Antonio after going to college and law school, and then serve as mayor of San Antonio. By the way, my brother Joaquin went to college, law school, and into politics with me. I can't get rid of him. He says that I'm a minute uglier than he is, but I'm actually a minute older. And served my community for 5 years as mayor until I got a call on April 16, 2014 from President Barack Obama. And I remember the date because it's not every day that you get a call from the President of the United States asking you if you want a job. I had just driven through the drive-thru at Panda Express. And you know how on your phone sometimes it says unknown or block call? It said private. So if you ever get a call that says private, answer it. Hopefully it'll be me on the other end of the line giving you a call. I did answer that call, and I served the last 2.5 years of the administration as Secretary of Housing and Urban Development. And during that time, had the chance to see 100 different communities across 39 states, from big cities to small towns, to Native American reservations, to visit with people who were sleeping on the street, and people who are experiencing the joy of becoming first-time homeowners. And to see all of the ways that our country is grappling not only with issues directly related to housing, but also everything that's connected to that. The fact that where you live often determines the quality of your child's education. It often determines the kind of job opportunities that you have available to you. It determines sometimes, like it did in Flint, Michigan, whether you have clean water to drink, or in too many other communities, whether you have clean air to breathe. And I'm running for president because I believe that it's time for new energy and new leadership with a new vision for our country. I've been going around to early states and throughout the 50 states of this country talking about what we need to become in the 21st century. The smartest, the healthiest, the fairest, and the most prosperous nation on earth. Everything from investing in universal pre-K for 3- and 4-year-olds and improving our K-12 education system, making higher education universal, because I don't have to tell the folks in this room that jobs require more knowledge and more skill than ever before. Ensuring that we change our healthcare system so that everybody who needs health care in this country can get it. Because too oftentimes the difference between health care and health insurance in America is that health insurance is the denial letter that you get telling you the 2 or 3 reasons why you can't get covered when you need treatment. And that we become the fairest nation by ensuring that no matter who you are, what you look like, what neighborhood you come from, or how much money you or your folks have or don't have, that you're treated the same by the criminal justice system, that we do sentencing reform, cash bail reform, invest in our public defender system, do things like legalize marijuana and invest in diversion programs so that people can get the help they need and get on a productive path, and that we reform our police departments across the United States so that just because the color of your skin is black, you don't get treated differently by law enforcement. I also believe that in the years to come, that we can be the most prosperous nation on earth, but that it has to mean prosperity for everybody. We need to raise the minimum wage. We need to ensure that we invest in things like affordable housing, because too oftentimes people can't afford the rent, not only in big cities but in small towns. That we have a tax code that rewards people who work and not only the wealthiest corporations or folks at the very top. And one of the ways that we can ensure we become the most prosperous and remain the most prosperous nation in the world in the 21st century is to harness the power of immigrants in the United States of America. I'm very proud that in early April I became the first candidate to put out the first and most comprehensive immigration proposal of this 2020 campaign. And I have to tell you, it represents a completely different vision for immigration from this president. It asks Americans to treat our immigrants with common sense and with compassion instead of cruelty. It represents a vision for the best of what we can be instead of scapegoating and fear and paranoia. I wanted to come and just tell you about my vision for immigration and then talk to you about why I think that's particularly important for this group as advocates, as activists, as attorneys, and people who have a unique opportunity to ensure that we do the right thing on this issue. I've established in my plan an inclusive roadmap for citizenship for undocumented individuals and their families so that they have a pathway to citizenship in the years to come, including for dreamers and those under temporary protected status and deferred enforced departure. I've called for us to revamp the visa system and strengthen family reunification in our country. I've called for us to eliminate the 10- and 3-year bars that are impractical, that too oftentimes keep individuals from doing what they believe they can and should. I've called for us to rescind Donald Trump's discriminatory Muslim ban and to ensure that we view immigrants through the lens of equality instead of bigotry. I've also called for us to increase refugee admissions back to the level that is statutorily allowed in this country of 110,000. I'd called for us to end 287G agreements in our country. Because as a former mayor, I know that what we need from our local communities is that we need trust in local law enforcement. We need to make sure that when a crime happens, that crime is going to be reported. We need to ensure that local law enforcement isn't obstructed from being able to do its main job because the federal government wants it to do its job. I've also called for repealing Section 1325 of the Immigration and Nationality Act, which applies a criminal rather than civil violation to people who are apprehended when entering the United States. And I have to be honest with you, when I've spoken about this, some people say, well, what are you talking about? The folks in this room know better than anybody that for the longest time, we did not enforce Section 1325 as a criminal violation. From the late 1920s until about the early 2000s, these things were mostly handled as a civil violation. I see the repeal of Section 1325 as essential to ending incarceration and family detention and the separation of little children from their mothers in our country. I would break apart ICE and revamp how we do enforcement and return enforcement functions to the Department of Justice and ensure that we have a culture change with that new enforcement. I would end the construction of the border wall, which is wasteful and ineffective and also does not represent the best of what we are as Americans. I believe that if there ever is a wall that is constructed along the entire length of the border of this country, that immediately the notion of America for generations to come will change from that of the Statue of Liberty, a beacon of hope that welcomes people from around the world, to a wall that we've used to literally and figuratively close ourselves off from the rest of the world. And so what's at stake is more than just a physical structure. What's at stake is the meaning and the essence of America, and we can't make that mistake. I've also called for stopping the game playing that is happening by this administration with people who are coming to the southern border, claiming asylum, asking for asylum, by ending metering and ending the Remain in Mexico policy that this administration has put in place. The folks who practice immigration law know that one of the problems we have is with our immigration judiciary. It's overworked, it's understaffed, it's not independent. I would create a well-resourced and independent immigration court system under Article 1 of the Constitution. And I want to thank this group for its advocacy over the years. I believe that we can bring that about. And finally, among the many other things that my plan proposes is to get to the root cause of the challenge. Just a few days ago, we watched the president in this very community get back to his old game of scapegoating immigrants, of using this as a kind of political piñata to drum up fear and paranoia and enthusiasm in a base that he sees himself as solely the president of, 34 or 35% of this country. But as soon as he came in to the Oval Office, he knew that we'd had a challenge before of people coming from Honduras and Guatemala and El Salvador, people who are fleeing terrible violence. Why would a mother come over 1,000 miles with her 6-month-old infant unless she's truly desperate? And this president had the opportunity during these last 2.5 years to do something about that. If I'm president, I would. I've called for a 21st century Marshall Plan to partner with Northern Triangle countries so that people can find safety and opportunity at home instead of having to come and present themselves at the United States border. That is a smarter, more effective, and more humane way to do immigration in the years to come. And I came here today because there is no issue that is going to be more important, not only in the next 2 years, but in the next several years in this country. And I wanted to say gracias, thank you. I know that every day the lawyers in this room represent clients, different walks of life, different backgrounds, different types of cases, different income levels, but always the same dream: to be able to be in this country and fully participate in the greatness of the United States of America. And you help make that possible. Thank you for that. Thank you for using your voice as advocates to push back, not only over the last couple of years, but truthfully, longer than that, to keep representing people, whether through a Republican administration or a Democratic administration, to say that we can do better than we have been, to treat people with basic respect and dignity. And thank you for meeting the moment of the last 2 years. I can't tell you how many folks I've spoken to who have volunteered to go and represent immigrants at the border at one of the detention centers, who have complimented the work of the immigration lawyers that have trained them, have inspired them, have helped make sure that those cases are on the right track. Many of the folks in this room have organized those efforts. Thank you for all of that. I also came here to challenge you, to redouble your efforts. You know better than anybody that what we're up against is the power of division and fear and paranoia. And as much as we may not like it, that's a very powerful force. We've seen its power in some of the darkest days of this country and of other countries around the world throughout history. I wanted to come here and to challenge you to devote every ounce of time and effort that you do have to enlist others in the cause, to mentor others who are coming up so that they can be as effective as possible, to tell the stories of your clients, because some of the most powerful things that we can do is to tell those stories, to humanize at a very time when this president and others are trying to dehumanize migrants, to make the case, to use the talents of this profession and the tenets of it. Even though we are the butt of jokes, if you think about it, in this day and age of fear-mongering, of pitching to emotion, think about the things that we learn as lawyers. That there's always more than one side to the story, and that you should understand that. That decisions should be made based on facts and evidence, and effort should be put forward to go find those facts and evidence. and not just on emotion. And also that it's good to reserve judgment until you have those facts and that evidence. In many ways, not just the clients you represent, but this country, as we think about what we are becoming and what we want to become in the years to come, need your skill and your advocacy more than ever. You know, about a year ago on Father's Day, I drove down early in the morning from my hometown of San Antonio to McAllen, Texas, to join a group of activists who were protesting at the Ursula Processing Center that some of the folks in this room are surely familiar with. The family separation policy under the Trump administration was in full swing, and the activists were there to push back. And amidst the frustration and the sadness of the understanding of what was going on in that processing center was also something that gave me a lot of hope, which was that the people who were there to protest were from different backgrounds and different places. They were white and they were black, they were Latino and they were Asian American, they were young and they were older. They were people from Texas and people from throughout the country. In other words, it was a very poignant and a powerful reminder that the love and the compassion that we have for other human beings and the basic respect that we want to show each other is more powerful and unifying than the division, the hate, the bigotry that some have sown in this country. It's also hopeful because it means that you have a whole army of Americans who are willing to follow your lead and your expertise and your voice as you seek to represent the people that you do and also to bring us together as a country. I hope that this conference, these few days, is a wonderful opportunity to network, to exchange ideas, and also to take a moment and to remember why you went into this in the first place. Because you believe in the greatness of this country and those along the way from many different countries throughout our world who have helped build it. And you know that to become even greater, we need to harness their talent in the years to come and give voice to their humanity, which you do every day. Muchísimas gracias. Thank you very much for having me here, Joe.